This is the main event, as I just finished a deep dive into which one is better, baseball cards or Pokemon cards. And you're definitely going to want to stay to the end because it's actually closer than you think, and you may be surprised by who comes out on top. But along the way, be sure to put your pick in the comments. Let's get started. Now, between baseball cards and Pokemon cards, I have a whole bunch of attributes. We're going to start with history. Now, you're probably familiar with the tobacco baseball cards, Honus Wagner. These are from 1909. We've got the Gaudy Babe Ruth from 1933, and of course, Topps coming on stage in 1952. But what you may not know is the Smithsonian recognizes the very first baseball card as this Brooklyn Atlantics card from 1860. So it's pretty clear that even though Pokemon and Pikachu came along in 1999, that baseball is going to easily win this. Fun fact, though, Pokemon actually launched in Japan in 1996 before it made its way to being popular in the US in 1999. So baseball cards gets the win here for history. Most valuable cards. This one's also relatively easy. We got the 1952 Topps being the most valuable baseball card of all time, selling for $12.6 million recently. The most valuable Pokemon card is this Pikachu. I think it's a prototype from Japan that was used for the US. But anyway, Jake Paul bought it for $5.2 million. I don't know if it's worth any more than that. He bought it in 2022. But the second most valuable Pokemon card is worth only $500,000. And it's very easy to show you some, $5 million, $4 million, $3 million, $2 million baseball cards. So pretty easy to call this one. We're giving the edge to baseball cards for the cards today being most valuable. In part, it is because of the history. They've been around longer. Next, let's look at what is the most popular today. And you've probably seen the articles, but Pokemon cards are bigger than baseball cards. Because let's even look at graded cards. So Pokemon cards, known as TCG here, makes up over half of the cards that are being graded every month. And almost 4 times as many Pokemon cards are being graded every month compared to baseball cards, which is just wild to think about. So in terms of popularity, right now, you've got to give the edge to Pokemon. And that leads us to retail sales. Now, this was not as straightforward to do research, but here's the best that I found. There's been roughly $1 billion in the last year in sales, retail sales of baseball cards, whereas Pokemon has about $2 billion in retail sales. Now, the reason this is so hard to actually figure out, and I've done my research and done the best I could on this, is that Pokemon actually did over $12 billion in revenue in 2024. And there's cartoons, there's movies, there's TV properties. I know they have an app. So it was most of the work was to try and figure out how much of that is Pokemon cards specifically. And it's definitely bigger than baseball cards, as I just went through that. And one of the main reasons for that, so we're going to give the edge to retail sales here, is because when you look at global reach, Pokemon is actually bigger in Japan than it is here in the US. And just think about that for a second, because it's pretty big and pretty popular here in the US. And then Europe and the rest of the world. So Pokemon definitely has a much more global reach. And that's why their revenues are much bigger than baseball cards. As much as I love baseball cards, and you can look at the United States and be like, oh, I don't know that Pokemon's that popular. Globally, Pokemon is way more popular than baseball cards. But now let's look at which one has actual real people. I think one of the charm of baseball cards is that these are real athletes with high highs and low lows, like idols growing up, and really human interest stories. And so for sure, I'm going to give the edge to the people in this one for baseball cards. But the flip side of this one is if you actually look at forever characters, Pokemon, this is Pokemon through the generations, Pikachu. This is Pikachu the Pokemon. Pokemon is going to have Pikachu cards 100 years from now. and we're really going to be out of our Reggie Jackson cards. There aren't going to be that many more Mickey Mantle cards, but every year these lovable characters for some are going to be printed over and over again, and it's basically an eternal Pokemon card that we don't have in baseball cards. Now, the other thing that's really interesting about cards is that they can have a dual purpose, and you can actually play a game with them. And you probably already know that in 1951, Topps actually launched a baseball card game with baseball card players, and it was like a game where you actually were simulating a baseball game. It didn't catch on. They abandoned it after just 1 year. In 1952, they have their regular baseball card edition, but they were on to something here because really seems like what really brings kids into the Pokemon world is obviously the cute characters and so forth, but they can play games with their friends, with their collections and cards, and compete. And it also drives them to go out and buy more Pokemon cards to get better cards to play these games better. And so I'm going to definitely give the dual purpose edge here to Pokemon. Now, when we look at variety of cards, and it's easy for every manufacturer to make, holograms and prison cards and the rainbows and all those types of things. But, when you look at Mickey Mantle and Bowman cards, and you look at the tobacco cards, the Gaudy cards, and even our modern cards, and then these rookie patch auto baseball cards, there's no doubt to me that part of the changing generation of players and stars brings a lot more variety than having the same characters over and over. It'll be interesting to see if Pokemon launches a new character and there's like a new rookie or something. But in terms of variety, I'm definitely going to give this to baseball cards. And related to kind of this example here from the Shohei Ohtani card is if we actually look at autographs, which I think is one of the cool things about baseball cards. I haven't seen a Pikachu autograph or signature, and I don't know too many other characters besides Charizard. But one of the things that's really come along with baseball cards is rookie autographs, getting Hall of Famers to autograph cards. They're now built into the manufacturing process, so there's on-card autographs that come with the cards. Obviously, there's a secondary market for getting your cards autographed and selling them, and I think this is a big part of what makes the tie to a real human athlete and an idol so powerful in baseball cards. So clearly giving the edge here to baseball cards. Now, brand stability is something that I want to talk about, and that sounds maybe too corporate, but if you go back to I love Upper Deck baseball cards, and they're not being made anymore, in part because of the whole fanatics and building up intellectual property ownership and so forth. And so Upper Deck cards are gone. Fleer doesn't exist anymore. There's no baseball cards from Fleer. And even Score, which had a pretty short run, but really, in my going back and looking at them, they're high quality cards. I really like the Score cards back then. But because one company owns Pokemon completely, rather than all these different baseball card companies bargaining for licenses to produce cards with the players and so forth, Pokemon has a huge advantage in that they own everything. They own all the intellectual property. They're not going to, stop a brand unless they choose to. So from a brand stability standpoint, Pokemon is going to be Pokemon 50 years from now, whereas I'm already mourning the loss of Upper Deck baseball cards. Now, rookie cards and first editions. If you're not familiar with Pokemon, and I can't say that I'm that familiar, they do have first editions where it's the first time for that type of card that character came out and has a nice little first edition on it. But in part because there's always new stars in baseball, it's very easy for me to say that the rookie cards in baseball every year and the hype around who's the next prospect, who's going to be the next breakout player, and then it's even fun to see like who are the busts that didn't make it, that there's always going to be new, really collectible, baseball card rookies every year, whereas Pokemon, like I said, maybe if they come out with a new character, I would go and buy those cards just because it's going to be something new and unique. But the Pokemon doesn't have this annual new first cards, and so give the edge there to baseball. Now, word of mouth. This is probably why Pokemon cards have become more popular and have higher retail sales today, because if you have kids, you know that when they go to school, their friends are playing Pokemon games, and then on the bus, they're trading Pokemon cards. And so just they don't have to do as much advertising on TV. I'm not sure that I've seen a Pokemon commercial, because the Pokemon fans themselves, like built into Pokemon, is sharing it with your friends and competing with your friends. Whereas I actually think baseball card collecting feels a little bit isolating. I would love for everybody to want to see my Reggie Jackson collection, or the fact that I have like every Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card, including Mother's Cookies and the star card that you're probably trying to figure out what those look like. So Pokemon has done it right with sort of a virality and word of mouth, and I'm giving them the edge, which kind of brings me to the future. So if I was thinking about future-proofing a brand, I was just at the National Baseball Card Show. I shared this picture where they really did a great job of bringing kids in for breaks. So they were opening, kids for free got to be part of the break, and were getting cards of their favorite players. They also had a kid zone where they could trade their cards. These kids looked really professional. They got the padded cases for their graded cards in there, and they're allowed to trade with their friends. They did keep adults out of there, so like it was really fascinating how like kids on their own are figuring out, if they're getting a good deal or not, and trading with like other kids that maybe they've never met. So I think the National Baseball Card Show did an amazing job to pull kids into the hobby more, but it's almost like an effort that they have to make. Whereas just organically, kids are into Pokemon cards today. And I've even seen moms of kids getting into Pokemon and collecting with their kids, and obviously dads as well. And so if I'm a huge baseball card fan. I'm actually not going to collect Pokemon cards myself. I'll keep making baseball card content here on YouTube. But if you told me I was going to buy a business and choose between baseball cards or Pokemon cards, I actually think the future, I'm sorry to say, is a little bit brighter for Pokemon. And so that brings us to the final grade, which if you count the dots here, which one is better, the ultimate battle? I think it's Pokemon, and I don't collect any Pokemon. But I can see it is winning the market. When I was a kid, baseball cards were like the biggest thing. I was a kid in the 80s. Baseball cards were all the rage. And now that I'm adult, I'm like living through those childhood memories and enjoying baseball cards again. I worry that the kids growing up today are not going to do the same with baseball cards. They're going to do the same with Pokemon cards, because that was the big thing from their childhood. And so that's not to take anything away from baseball cards. In fact, I'm not as worried, because I don't go out and buy the 2024 and 2025 baseball cards. I'm a little more into vintage. The cards I collect have already been produced, and it's kind of fun to chase down good graded cards that are vintage and so forth. But I think Pokemon has done such an amazing job. And if you haven't seen this in market, or you don't have kids, this may be surprising to you, but Pokemon is definitely winning the battle, and you don't have to take my word for it. Just look at the hobby, and you can see the dark green is Pokemon cards graded every month. The light green teal down here in the bottom is just baseball cards, and then football cards, basketball, and so forth. And so Pokemon has become the new generation of kids' baseball cards. But if, like me, you're into baseball cards, check out our baseball card price guides. We have them for Topps cards from the 80s and the 70s. If you're looking to cash in on your collection, or you're going to rip wax, these are the cards that you're looking for. They're going to bring you the most money, or the chase cards from each one. It makes it easier than trying to look up every card that maybe you inherited from your dad, or from a collection that you bought. These tell you the top 10 to 20% of cards that have the most value. Most of everything else will be common cards. So if you have a chance, take a look at those, may help you. And be sure to watch one of these videos next. It's going to be about baseball cards, because that's what we do here. But YouTube says you're going to love it. And if I had to pick one, even though I can't see what it's showing on your screen, I'm going to go with the one on the left. But feel free to choose whichever one you want, and we'll see you there. Are you still here? Go watch one of those videos.